Hey everybody, welcome to an episode of A Conversation. And today's conversation is with Paranoid American.
Hey guys, what are we
We'll just
doing?
call you Thomas, right?
Yeah,
Is that
I've got a
okay?
real name. You can call me Thomas.
Okay,
A lot
okay,
of people do just straight up call me Paranoid as my first name, and I'm okay with it too.
okay. What's your preference?
You can call me Thomas. That's if
All
it
right,
feels more
okay.
natural. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels a little more natural. And my co-host today is Justin.
Hey, how's it going?
Is that Bigfoot with a slice of pizza on your shirt? I just noticed
It
that.
is, yeah. Christmas present from my wife, so she knows
Very
me very
nice.
well. Two things that I love.
Are you a full Bigfoot believer?
Yeah,
Or are you on the
I am.
fence?
I'm on the fence on what exactly it is, but I know there's something. I believe. I already believe. I got that poster back there as like I want to believe. Like I already believe in this stuff, but I want to know some of this stuff. But yeah, I do believe in Bigfoot. I believe in aliens. I believe in ghosts and most things. So yeah, I'm on the fence about what it means and what they are and like the deeper context of them. But yeah,
What about you, Thomas? Do you believe in Bigfoot?
I think I'm a little on the fence, although I come more around to accepting as I meet more people and talk to more people. I tend to open my mind more and more. I wouldn't say like I'm outward convinced, but I just know too many people on Bigfoot in particular that I know very closely and trust. Like I've literally trusted some of them with my lives, like going out hunting and stuff before. So I mean, that I would take their word over anything wilderness related, especially as like a computer nerd city slicker like myself. You know what I mean?
Right.
So when someone that I know has been out in the field and is absolutely rational and doesn't just make up stories for it because they've got way cooler stories, and then they tell me. And the other thing too is the people that I've had tell me about Bigfoot. A lot of them was not in a public setting, and a lot of them were like, "Hey man, don't tell anyone about this." Like I'm actually kind of embarrassed. I feel like people would think I'm crazy, but because I'm paranoid American, like a lot of people end up opening up to me about, crazy experiences that they've had. So I've just had way too many people that otherwise are like the most rational person you'd ever consider. So for that reason alone, I don't want to start calling them like liars or like making things up in my
Right.
head or crazy. So I'll defer to being open to that. So yeah, I would say I'm at like a 5.5 out of 10. Like I'm
Okay.
leaning off the fence towards it being real.
Right. What about this is one that made me laugh when I heard about it. Dogman.
I don't know. Let me get to Bigfoot first. Like once I'm all in on Bigfoot, then we can start talking about Bigfoot sidekick. But at this point, I don't know yet.
Yeah. When I first heard about Dogman, the mental picture that came was Scruff McGruff.
Well, I mean, but see, also like Dogman, it from what I've heard, it's not a werewolf. Like it's just a huge wolf/dog, and I absolutely believe you could run into a ginormous wolf in the wilderness that would tear you up. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
to me, Dogman's unimpressive outside of his relation to Bigfoot. He's only cool because he's like Bigfoot's sidekick. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it would just be like, hey, watch out, there's big wolves out there, and people would be like, yeah, we know.
Yeah. I like to listen to the Confessionals, Tony Merkel's show.
Oh, yeah, huge fan.
Yeah, I love this stuff. And the two stories that stood out to me the most is like the terror in the LBL, and then also I forgot the name of the episode. I think it's titled something like a hunter, like with a dog. Like, he's a hunter. He goes out with his dog, and then the dog man comes and attacks them or something. And that was like just an epic story.
I think they're great story, and I'm all for it. Like I would rather talk about Dogman and Bigfoot and Mothman and any other cryptid over politics most of the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I'm all in. Even if I'm not 100% convinced, I love talking about it, and I don't think definitely of anyone whether they do believe in it or don't believe in it. I think everyone's on their own journey to accept the one true Christ of Bigfoot and Dogman.
Right. Well, let's talk about your book a little bit. It's called NASA, Never a Straight Answer.
Oh yeah, I got a copy right here.
So let me put you on
the main cover. This is the main cover of NASA. I'll even take it out of the plastic because I always put all my comics in nice little plastic backers. It's a 40-page comic called Never a Straight Answer, NASA, starring Stanley Kubrick directing the moon landings. And it's
nice.
full color, 40 different pages. It's a nice hefty book. Like you could probably kill some good bugs with this thing if you rolled it up. Yeah, it's something I've been working on for 5+ years, and it's kind of the absolute combination of every really cool Stanley Kubrick related conspiracy theory all in one, like things from his life and weird quirks that he had, and all the symbolism from his movies, and every single sort of like fake Apollo moon landing theory, all crammed into one book.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a cross section of three things that I've been passionate about my entire life.
That is awesome. So let's back up a little bit. How did you get into creating comic books? How did you get into like the conspiracy theories and all that fun stuff?
I mean, I feel like I was born into wanting to love comic books. My best friend and next door neighbor when I was growing up, like as far as I back remember, like 3 or 4, because I'm grew up in upstate New York and I moved out when I was 8. And by the time I moved out, I was all in on wanting to make comics. I couldn't draw very well. My friend Sam could absolutely, like, he could draw phenomenally for like a 6 or a 7-year-old kid.
Right.
But absolutely. So I was set on it. And even when I moved to Florida, all the friends that I made, I was like, let's make a comic book, like together, like we'll write it and we'll do it. Like that's all I ever wanted to do. And life gets in the way. And then it kind of like took a back seat for a really long time. And just a weird sequence of events, I ended up getting a job at Disney after my stint in the military. I started working at Disney on property in the post-production facility called the Royo Disney Building here in Orlando. And I just remember at one point, there was some guy that came in to do a presentation, and he had worked on The Lion King, and everyone's like, oh my God, that's the guy. It's the guy that worked on The Lion King. Everyone, like it was like a big thing. You wanted to sit next to him. And he showed some comic book he was working on. And it was for kids, so it wasn't up my alley. And it was just like, I was just thinking like, isn't that good? Like I could do better than that. And not only do I think I could do better than and everyone was like going crazy over it. I was like, okay, I can definitely match that quality of writing and art and everything. I was like, but what if this was about like MK Ultra or something cool and not just stupid like fairies and dragons? Again,
Right.
No shade. Like it's wildly popular. I think he's sold like 200,000 copies of this
Wow.
freaking book. I don't want to mention the name of it, but I just remember that it was that moment, and I was literally looking to my left and my right, and I was like, damn, this dude worked on Aladdin. That dude worked on Lion King. Can I just get one person in this room that I'm working on this project for 8 months? Can I like befriend just a few of them and be like, hey, dude, let's write a comic about, MK Ultra or Operation Midnight Climax or something, the Lindbergh baby being, like a fake kidnapping. And that was kind of the nugget. And that was like 2006. And then slowly over time, I actually figured out how to write a somewhat cohesive story and how to produce the damn thing. So yeah, that was kind of the initial nugget, was just like, I don't want to work on dragons and fairies. And I wish that the talent of these guys was channeled into something way more niche that I cared about.
Right. And how did you fall into that niche? Like, what got you into
I don't know,
conspiracy
again,
stuff?
like the day I was born, but I joke, this is only like a 10% joke, but it's like, spoiler alert, all the little kids out there, but it's basically when I found out about Santa Claus. And I remember the thought process, and it was like
you mean that he's real, right?
Theory, bro. Yeah, when I found out that he was absolutely real, and I was just like, damn, dude, how like does this go all the way to the top? Because I started going through my mind, and it was like my mom, my dad, my grandparents, my teachers, all the authority figures in my life. I'm sure a dare officer probably came in at one point, and like, so I was like, man, if everyone is lying about this, but everyone's also in on it. And then I was like, wait, now I'm in on it. Now I'm part of, and it just like, and I don't know, I was like 8 or something. Might have been a little bit late in the game, but I think it was like 8 or 9. And I just remember that feeling of like, damn, dude, like how many other things are just absolute lies. And kind of you're told like, oh no, it's just one thing. It's just the Santa Claus thing. Don't worry. Like there's nothing else that anyone lies about.
Yeah. Easter Bunny's legit.
It's this one thing, and we've all agreed that we're not going to lie about anything. So I remember that feeling. And I mean, X-Files was on at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And if you watch any 80s or 90s cartoons, like they just ubiquitously like believe in conspiracy theories. Like they'll just walk down the street and like Men in Black will be there with the glasses and like poking at their ears, and they don't even explain it. And it's because we just grew up in that. And I also remember satanic panic was when I was growing up, 80s and 90s. We literally had sheriffs coming to the school and convincing every one of us, all these kids, like, hey, there's satanic kidnappers waiting around every corner, and they're going to snatch you in a van if you don't have a secret safe word and if you don't have a plan for your. So like, I grew up in this whole environment where conspiracy was like my water as a fish. Like I couldn't even tell that I was a conspiracy theorist until later on. And I was like, what do you mean you don't believe in inside jobs? You know, haven't you heard about this Santa guy? Come on.
Wait till I tell you about the Tooth Fairy. You're not even going to believe it.
Dude, and yeah, it's funny to think about it in those terms, but that's literally where it came from. And I guess the other underlying thing too is I grew up Roman Catholic, and the whole premise of Catholicism and maybe Christianity as a whole, but it's that the devil is out there trying to trick you. Like it's the ultimate conspiracy. He exists, but he's trying to make it so you don't believe that he exists, or he's trying to do things that look good but they're really bad. So it's really like nothing is as it seems, and that's a weird mentality to kind of be grown up and raised in, because you're always looking over your shoulder, someone's shaking your hand, and I'm thinking like, yeah, but you might be a demon. You know what I mean? Like you might be possessed by the devil. I don't know you.
Right. All right, well, let's get into the Stanley Kubrick stuff. Like, what piqued your interest about that conspiracy theory in particular, and to walk us down that one. Walk us through that.
So, I mean, I think of my first Kubrick movie that I paid attention to was Clockwork Orange, and I saw it way too young, unsupervised, but it rocked my whole world. And I think that was the first time that I saw what like mind control might look like, and I got it. Like I totally understood what they were trying to do to this guy and why, and everything about it. So I was kind of hooked on Kubrick in that regard. But the biggest time that I had like my whole mind flipped, and I saw Jay Widener's series called Kubrick's Odyssey. And I think I saw it in the early 2000s, because this was like fresh out of the military for me. And I was trying to show everyone I knew, and no one wants to watch like a 3-hour documentary about some theory about a movie. And so I've found out very rapidly, I was like, man, no one else wants to watch these 4 or 5 hour documentaries with me. And I was like, oh, well, just watch it all by myself. So I got really, really deep into that one. And he has this whole theory about, you know, how The Shining was a disclosure. And the one that really sold me was that shot where Danny stands up on the carpet and he's got a sweater and it says Apollo 11. And it's like the way he stands up perfectly straight, like it's literally a rocket shooting up into space. There's really no one that could ever convince me that that wasn't intentionally meant to represent that thing. Now, all the context about, well, it's a disclosure and he really did it, that's where the fun speculation come in. But I feel like there is zero speculation to say that that exact scene in The Shining represented the very real Apollo 11 launch. Why? Why the hell is that even in there? What does it have to do with the rest of the story? So yeah, all the other little pieces that he started playing in, and room 237 and the moon being 237,000 miles and all like the moon room, all of that stuff. I was like, man, there's probably something to this. And then I remember feeling like I was a little crazy and silly for thinking that, but then I still couldn't convince myself that that wasn't true. So I think that was the first time that I was like, okay, Kubrick is more than just some director that won some awards. He's not just like a Michael Bay, you know, that was a little bit deeper. There's actually something way, way more to it. So I think that, and then honestly, the Eyes Wide Shut kind of sealed the deal for me.
Really? Like, what about it?
Well, the fact that he actually shot. Yeah, sorry, I make a lot of assumptions. Like everyone just knows all the things that I've been like knee deep into forever.
Right.
So one of the premises that Eyes Wide Shut, it's basically this rich elite group get together and they have these orgies like once a year, right? And you're not allowed to talk about it. It's very secretive. It's very, very elite. There's all this other subcontext of the film, but the way that they wear the masks and the fact that it's like the richest of the rich, it seems so much like it's modeled after this thing called the Surreal Dinner Ball that used to be held at this Rothschild mansion in Europe. And it was held annually or biannually. There's a really famous one that if you search for Surreal Dinner Ball, one of them was hosted by Salvador Dali. So a lot of people showed up and they had all kinds of grandiose, surrealist sort of outfits. And that was made it really iconic. Well, that very much is what Eyes Wide Shut's talking about. And if anyone's thinking, you're just, kind of making these weird connections, like he literally shot it at the exact mansion in which the
Oh,
surreal
wow.
dinner ball really happened in real life. And he used
Wow.
that as the location of where this whole thing took place. So coincidence? Yeah, maybe
Right.
like Stanley Kubrick wasn't really known for just arbitrarily doing stuff and just being like, "Oh, that's weird. I didn't even plan on that." If no, it's the opposite, right? He was probably that might have been the plan all along, and then he like built a movie around it. So that one, the rumors about him being taken out, and there was like another cut, and they maybe not. I don't know. I really feel that it doesn't matter because what he was able to bake into that movie, it kind of shows this whole world of trafficking and elites and making threats and following through on those threats.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Do you have a favorite Kubrick movie?
Probably Clockwork Orange, maybe just because it was the first one I saw, but I love everything about the movie. It's just like so shocking, but the aesthetics and the cinematography, the music, just I don't know, everything about it. I can't separate the nostalgia and the rose-colored glasses from being like my first entry into a Kubrick movie, but it's really hard to top that one for me.
I didn't know if you had a follow up, Justin. On that.
Oh no, I was just curious.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
There's a couple scenes in particular, like the classic one where they've got his eyes spread open, he's making him watch all this stuff. There's another one too that's completely sort of shifts your perspective when you watch, and that's when he's in jail and he finds the Bible, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, look at this model prisoner! He's reading the Bible all the time now. Like there really is hope for this guy. He went from this horrible, vicious criminal, and now he's just reading the Bible all the time." So they all saw this as this act of reformation on Alex's part, but then it shows you what's going on in Alex's head, and he is imagining himself as Pontius Pilate or as one of the guys that is like whipping Christ as they're leading him up to the cross. So you got like this entire exterior world that's like, oh, he's doing such a great job, like more of this. And in his head, like they're creating a literal monster. And I don't know. I just always thought that was such a really powerful way of conveying that you're trying to force this square peg into the round hole, and you're like, oh, it's finally working. You know what I mean? But you've got no idea what you're doing.
Yeah. Do you think that was all in reference to like MK Ultra?
Yeah, I mean a trillion million %. There's no way that it's not, because it was just trauma-based programming. It existed prior to that particular movie being shot, and then there's even man, it's so weird. It always dovetails. There's a word I won't say. We talked about it earlier. I'll just say my code word for it is thrill oxide. But thrill oxide in Clockwork Orange is also the first time in major cinema that this word that I can't say out loud is actually included. It's on the back of the bar that they go into. There's one for like mescaline, and there's one for all these different drugs. There's one in particular that is the very first reference in motion picture that references this drug, and it was based on the book by Anthony Burgess, Clockwork Orange. And Anthony Burgess himself got his reference from Aldous Huxley and Aldous Huxley's Doors of Perception. So there's like this direct lineage from this very controversial topic and substance, which also intertwines directly with MK Ultra program. In fact, it predates MK Ultra by a good 2 decades, maybe more. So if anything, this thread that finds itself into Clockwork Orange is before MK Ultra existed.
Wow. Yeah, I had no idea like that was in like mainstream movies and stuff. That's crazy.
Yeah, dating all the way back to then, right? Like to the 60s. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, because I only heard about it like recently, probably in the last like decade or so.
The first one that doesn't mention this one, but I think the Clockwork Orange is truly the first movie that ever mentions it by name. But there's a lot of other movies that referenced it in different ways. One of them is The Tingler, with Vincent Price. And it's one of his early horror movies. And if you look at the very beginning, he's reading this book and he's talking about what if you could cause so much terror in somebody that terror could manifest into an actual entity, like an evil, like hate demon creature, right? But the book, and he never mentions it out loud, but if you look at the spine, it says LSD 25 on the spine, and that is a direct reference to the secret and the government programs where they were using all these crazy psychedelics, not just as truth serums, but to see how far they could push the human mind to its brink. And so that movie is direct relation. Even the Twilight Zone, a lot of people don't know this. The phrase Twilight Zone is actually coined also to an MK Ultra program where they were using insulin to induce comas. To this day, when they induce a coma, it's based on this same guy's research, and he himself dubbed it the Twilight Zone. So that phrase Twilight Zone also comes from this pre MK Ultra, because this is all before World War II. So this is like pre MK Ultra. MK Ultra only existed when the CIA got created, and the CIA was predated by the OSS. Well, all this stuff is even pre OSS. So you can keep winding back the clock onto this stuff all the way until the late 1800s, basically.
You're blowing my mind, man. That's crazy. Just to see all those connections, and I've seen the Tingler, and of course Twilight Zone. I'm a huge fan. Wow.
So yeah, it's a classic horror movie. If you go back and just watch the very opening when he's there with the book says LSD 25 on it. There's no one knew what LSD was at that point when that movie had come out. It was basically relegated to military personnel, intelligence, and then their connections into Hollywood, which was basically through Aldous Huxley and some of the doctors that Aldous Huxley worked with. There was one famous doctor, and I think it was Cary Grant. It was some famous actor, and he basically was giving this dude high doses of LSD for therapeutic reasons, and it was working great. And he was going around telling everyone, but all his friends were also high society and Hollywood actors. So there was this very real, like, gate-kept elite bubble society that the only people that knew what LSD was intelligence, military, and Hollywood. That was it. That was the only people that knew about it.
Wow. That's crazy. Let's get back to Kubrick and the moon landing. Let's talk about that. Do you believe that it was faked?
I do. I think it was faked. I don't know if it was definitely a Stanley Kubrick production. I don't see why they wouldn't want to hire the person that had the most knowledge and the most technical aptitude to do it. And again, that damn scene in The Shining, it makes me, again, I'm like a 5.5 on Stanley Kubrick actually was involved. I don't know if that's the video that everyone saw, but I do believe that they at least contacted him, and he was like, he knew what they were asking for, and it just never left his brain. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of really good examples of where NASA, if you step away from Stanley Kubrick and you step away from the footage itself, there's so many instances where NASA did lie to the public on a lot of different occasions. All sorts of weird. So recording over the tapes, that's a huge red flag, right? Yeah. And there's been two explanations. One explanation was, oops. The other explanation was that, we were running out of tape and there was a tape shortage. So, of course, we taped over the most monumental achievement in all of human history that we spent decades and leveraged the entire Cold War against us being we went for that one first to record over and not all the other ones in the room. So that one's weird. The other ones, too, is that astronaut Collins, there was a specific photo, and this came up on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan used to bring this up all the time, and then he kind of just stopped. He walked away from this aspect. Yeah. But there was this photo where Collins was in a simulation, and he was suspended with strings, and he was kind of acting like he was in zero gravity. And that photo was released. It's like, here they are training. But then shortly after, someone airbrushed those lines out, and that photo made its way into a textbook about the Apollo missions. And then that textbook gets disseminated. So now you've got an objectively factual lie, doctored photograph that never really they never said like, oh my God, recall all those. Let's put out that never happened. It was just like, oh yeah, that was a mistake. But there's just too many convenient little things. The Apollo 1 mission too is a huge freaking red flag where everyone knew going in that there was all kinds of problems with the very first Apollo launch, and the freaking dudes were maybe taken out, I think. So anyways, yeah, there's so many different reasons why NASA makes it easy to be critical and suspicious. So then you just add on the enormous pressure that we must have been under, because especially after the Apollo 1 mission, right? it was like 3 astronauts die in the very first mission that was supposed to be on our big mission towards Mars that the president had promised us. And then even all the way up into the later Apollo missions, they were just like shooting off to the moon and spinning around it. It was only until Apollo 11 that they said they were actually going to step foot onto the moon. So by the time Apollo 11 had come, that's gone through the Saturn program, the Apollo program, the Gemini program. Like, people were sick of hearing about the damn NASA programs that were never amounting to anything other than cereal and Tang commercials and kind of
Right.
like, shooting around the moon. So they said. So all of that meant that once they were like, okay, this is the one, we're actually going to hit it now. There was no option to not do it because it would have been the end of the Apollo program. And even one of the original astronauts, I think in Apollo 13, the one where the Tom Hanks movie, and they have to like, shoot around because there's like a fire in the module. Even when he came back, he was like, that's the last time that we're going to the moon for a very long time. They had another mission, I think 8 or 9 months after that. But it always seems that the astronauts say like these really weird, inconvenient things that NASA has to immediately like, oh, no, they didn't mean that. They didn't mean that. And that literally happened when the guy came back. And he said, I think it was Lavelle. And he said, that'll be the last time we're going to the moon for a while. NASA within like days was like, oh, you didn't mean that. He didn't mean that. In fact, here's another mission. Like, they're always kind of playing this weird catch up. I don't know. So it invites so much suspicion. And one of the things too about conspiracy theories is they don't exist in full transparency. Or very rarely do you have all these different, like, multifaceted conspiracy theories come up when someone's like, here's all the facts, look it all up yourself, here's the documentation, here's the pictures, here's the video. Of course we've got video of everything. It's the most important thing we've ever done. Why wouldn't we have video from every angle possible? Here it is for you to watch. And the fact that we don't have that, it literally is inviting conspiracy theories to form. So yeah, that's why I think I'm all in on the moon theory. I think that's why it's interesting. And I think that Kubrick was either involved or he was just as interested for all these exact reasons that I'm explaining and just kind of like really honed it in The Shining.
Interesting. I think one of the things that always stood out to me here recently was the fact that we can't go back to the moon because we haven't figured out a way to like protect our ships from the Van Allen belt radiation. Like, well, how do we do it back in the 60s? Like, how do you explain that?
Movie magic.
Like, oh, yeah, we lost the technology. That's just crazy.
They always have these little debunkings that it's like, oh no, that's being debunked. Here, here's the reason why they didn't say that. But the fact is, even the most recent missions by any country, there's either been just CGI versions of like, well, here's what's happening right now, but we can't show it to you because of XYZ reason. So here's a 3D amalgamation of what's happening. Or when the US recently did their latest mission, they explained that they didn't have a 24/7 live feed because of latency reasons. And then it was like, well, it's not that we don't have the technology, it's that the satellite system that they were using to do that live stream had already allotted its bandwidth to other companies. Someone was streaming the Barbie movie, and then they probably had like a football game. But that was the excuse. It was like, we literally do not have the bandwidth to show you this monumental. And it's like, you guys can't pull out the stops to quell the conspiracy theories and the rumors. You can't just be like, you know what, we're going to put an end to all of it. Here's a live stream. It's in 4K. It's in 12K. Zoom in, slow-mo it, do whatever you want. If you've got but they don't do that. They just say like, oh crap, we forgot to put, the quarter in the meter, so we ran out of streaming. Sorry.
That's insane. All right, now here's another question for you. Flat Earth. Yes or no?
I'm a globetard. Okay, I'm not fully on board on flat Earth. I don't. Here, my biggest thing with flat Earth. So I got two things. The first one, if you take it at surface level, I just don't like conspiracy theories that rely on your human eyesight. When people are like, well, I saw it for myself and I can't see no curve. Like, that's great. I don't believe in your eyes. I don't even believe in my eyes. So I definitely don't believe in your eyes.
Right.
But I extend this to any sort of visual conspiracy theories. Ghosts, Bigfoot, like we were talking about before, flat Earth, curved Earth. Any aspect of this, I just don't trust human eyesight enough for that to be the one metric. So can you prove it in any other way? And all of the different experiments that I've seen where they use laser balances and like high tech stuff, they usually end up proving curvature, but then the dialogue shifts to like, well, yeah, because they're all in on it. Like if you're making machinery that is meant to detect the curvature of the earth, then you're going to have NASA's lies baked into your, firmware. So yeah, of course they're all going to say curvature. So it just becomes this like never ending burden of proof.
Right.
So that's one aspect of it. The deeper one that I think is that flat earth, and this is where it dovetails with like Tartaria and like ancient technology type stuff, but it's essentially based on the premise of everything you've ever learned is a lie. Everything that's ever been written is a lie. Going back to ancient Greece. In fact, ancient Greece, maybe it didn't even exist. Maybe they just invented ancient Greece in the 1800s, and before that, it was just Jetsons flying around and spaceships and teleportation devices, and they didn't want you to have that, so they knocked it all out and they sent us back to Flintstones, and now we're like, that one's just too hard for me to swallow because now it's like, well, what are you basing your research off of? Like, what book did you find that is the exclusion to this rule that you're developing? When you say all of written history is a lie, except for this one that I found that I relate to. Because whenever the flat earth and the old world and the Tartary stuff comes up, and they're like, well, based on this book, be like, wasn't that book just lies? Aren't all books all lies? And once you get into that mindset, it never ends. Like you can just question everything. You can be like, well, Galileo didn't exist. Christopher Columbus didn't exist. Anyone before the year 1890 didn't actually exist. It's all fake, and you can never prove to me that it's real. So it just becomes like a non-starter and like a philosophical dead end.
Very true. Very true. So what other...
and I was gonna say too, flat Earth, just like NASA and the moon, like it could be easily proven, right? And I don't know if anyone wants to actually do this, but it seems like this would be such a pragmatic way to prove this. You come up with a kit that's like, here's how to make a suborbitable weather balloon that you can actually send into space to prove the curvature. You figure out a way to make one of these kits for $400 or less, which seems very feasible. And you just open source that. You do a crowdfunding thing where it's like, hey, we're going to raise $200,000, and with that money, we're going to send one of these kits to like 1,000 different people. They all have their own biases and objective and non-objective, but we're going to get 1,000 of them out there, and let's see like how many of these have curvature, how many don't. And but it's so much easier to just be like, well, I just watched this NASA footage that they uploaded, and I'm just going to use that. I'm not going to actually try and disprove it myself. I'm going to use this thing and build off everyone else's agreements. So if anyone cared enough about it to either prove that it did exist or didn't exist, I think that the burden of proof are on people that claim the Earth is flat, because now the conventional accepted answer is that it's curved, right? So now it's like, if you don't believe that, the burden of proof is to present a different theory that's compelling, and it's not for all of the curve. Like, I don't want to go back to school again and relearn about all the Earth curve. Like, I already did it, right? And it sunk in, and the programming worked, and now I'm a globetard. But now it's like the onus is on someone else to undo all that programming.
Jesse, your room is haunted.
Yeah, that's what it turns out to be.
We actually have video evidence of that one, though.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, proof.
I just prove that one.
That's another one for me too, though. On like Ghost, I have such confidence in capitalism that I believe if there were truly a haunted hotel or house or poltergeist or Amityville, that there would just be a freaking TikTok channel that's running Coca-Cola ads on the bottom of it 24/7. It's like, oh my God, did you see that poltergeist? You know what else is shocking? This new Mountain Dew Baja Blast flavor. Come get, like, I swear to God, though, I'm not even joking. Like, there would be, someone would be selling you, sports betting lottery and being like, oh my God, there's a ghost. Remember, bet when the ghost is going to pop up next. Because I have so much faith in people to want to exploit things to make a buck off of it. That's the main reason that I'm on the fence with ghosts. Like, show me the TikTok channel first.
Right. Yeah, that's funny. Justin, did you have any questions?
Yeah, well, actually, going back a little bit to Kubrick and all of his movies. So there's he talks about a lot of, or not, he doesn't talk about it. That's the thing. He just kind of shows these things that we can interpret as him discussing like the moon landing being faked, stuff like that. Why do you think he was allowed to make or, you know, say all of these things? And no one tried to silence it. No one tried to like block his movies from being made.
I mean, if he really did have insider knowledge, then he might have just he kind of had like the non-icky version of Epstein style Mossad blackmail, right? Like he had receipts and he had a freaking mind sharp as a trap. He was like 200 IQ or something crazy. Like he was absolute chess master genius. So I think that he might have made himself into a formidable opponent, but also I don't think it was just like, oh, don't screw with Stanley. It was more like you want this guy on your team and not on someone else's team. And I really think that if there's any truth at all to Kubrick being involved or being even consulted about this, it was kind of like they recognized this great resource they had. And just like we were talking before we started recording, but I think that the intelligence agencies get all this credit for doing these nefarious plans. All they do is fun stuff. They just find other people doing crazy stuff and throw money at it and say like, here's some more fuel for your fire. So they see Stanley Kubrick and it's like, man, what could this guy do with an unlimited budget? And whatever he does, they could just consider that R&D cost. That's research and development.
Yeah.
And once Stanley Kubrick knows, for example, how to use a NASA lens, which is true, and Barry Lyndon, so that he can shoot scenes entirely with candlelight and no other exterior light, like him pushing this technology and these mediums to sort of like new frontiers, that's part of what the CIA or any other agency you want to fill that in with, that's kind of what they're in the business of doing, is identifying exceptional people and funding them so that they can just, you know, expand on whatever they're doing. And then they harvest whatever they end up making. So, I mean, in this case, maybe they just got a master class from Kubrick and how to dispel or convey like really deep esoteric topics subliminally almost, right? So then he's out of the scene when it's like, okay, now we're going to use this for the next Kamala Harris campaign. And now all of a sudden he's standing up and it says like vote Kamala or something. I don't know, but like it's a joking reference, but that's kind of how I see it, that they invested in Kubrick and Kubrick paid off in spades. And we just won't ever really know exactly how they're leveraging all that because it just gets disseminated through everything you can imagine.
Yeah.
You think they're still funding guys like Kubrick today that are in Hollywood or some kind of entertainment media?
I think now it's just corporate sponsorships of like TikTok stars. You know, they see some kid doing a dance and they're like, "Oh, we can use this." So I highly doubt that there's like an old school version where the Man in Black CIA agent has got like the glasses on and he's like, hey, you know, here's a note. I don't think it happens like that. It's just like, hey, guess what? This company you've never heard of that sells some stupid bracelet that you'd never use, they want to invest, you know, $200,000 in your TikTok channel. Just do these things or wear this stuff. Like that would be such an easier way. So I think that the new version of CIA is just Zoom meetings and boardrooms and, you know, contracts with like all these private companies, because that's, if anything, that's what the CIA got really good at between the 60s and the 80s, was setting up multiple shell companies that owned their own shell companies to the point where you can't track them all down. So now you got to do something with all those shell companies. So yeah, some of them make little stupid stuffed animals based on influencers, and I guarantee you those dudes that are raising all that money for those stupid YouTube stuffed animal things that don't sell, like there's got to be some kind of intelligence work where they're just like, we want you on the payroll. Even if we lose money on it, we're going to put you on the payroll.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I think it's been proven out, too. The CIA's got a direct line with Hollywood. A lot of the movie, like American Sniper is a really good example, but there's been so many movies where the CIA comes out or the director will come out and be like, hell yeah, we got the CIA to help, help consult on this movie. So it's really, now you know it's really accurate and it's a selling point. There was a time when they would be like, don't tell anyone that we were involved. But now it's like they put that top billing, right? People go and see the movie. They're like, oh man, this comes right from the CIA. I got to see it.
Right. Batman's gonna be awesome. It's written by Tom King. He was in the CIA.
I mean, but that's not even a joke. It's literally what people say, man.
Yeah, it was. I remember I was excited. I was like, oh, cool. Like Batman's gonna be like a spy or something. It's gonna be awesome. And it was not.
I think that's part of the genius of the CIA too, is that they convince everybody that they're so ingenious and so original, and they've got all these cool things going on. And again, all they do is they seek those people out and put them on the payroll, and then it's like that meme, like, I made this. It's like, you didn't make that. You just went and hired a dude, and the dude is the badass. But now you own the dude, so now you think that you made the thing that the it gets funny how it works.
Yeah. So what other conspiracy theories are you into besides Kubrick?
I mean, all the above, I think.
Okay.
My big ones is mind control, MK Ultra, Illuminati, secret societies. Those are kind of the ones that revolve around humans, less so than supernatural entities. Those are my favorite conspiracy theories.
So let's go into the Illuminati stuff a little bit.
Yeah, Bavarian Illuminati, May 1st, 1776, Adam Weishaupt, and Baron von Nige, who never gets enough credit, but he's actually the one that really gave them their flair. But yeah, the Bavarian Illuminati is an interesting one because people still say that there's like a hip-hop Illuminati, or they'll say that they still exist. I personally don't think that there's a direct lineage between anything modern day and when you say Illuminati. But what does exist is the system that they set up. So like, for anyone that's maybe just heard the term and never went all the way deep into it, I'm working on actually quick shout out. You can go to illuminaticomic.com and sign up for a book I've been working on with Donut about the whole Bavarian Illuminati background and everything. But the general premise is that this guy, Adam Weishaupt, becomes the youngest professor of canon law in Bavaria, basically modern day Germany. But he becomes the youngest professor in Bavaria at the same time, and mostly because of the Pope came and kind of evicted all of the Jesuits from academia. For the longest time, it was the Jesuit order was in command of all education for centuries. So Adam Weishaupt happens to just be alive at this moment in time when the Pope kicks all the Jesuits out, and he becomes a shoo-in to teach inside Ingolstadt, the University of Ingolstadt, for law. He's a smart guy, obviously, because he had gotten that far. His uncle was basically ran the school, so he had, nepotism was sort of in full effect.
Right.
But he uses this as an opportunity to say, like, hey, I can connect with all these other really smart people, and there's a lot of them that are anti-Jesuit because they've been forced to like work under these Jesuits for 2 centuries, and a lot of them just have the same resistance as like a 13-year-old being told to clean their room constantly, right? Like, screw you, mom, I'm going to go out and do things with my life, so that a lot of them had that mentality. And he ends up saying, like, hey, as long as you're not a Jesuit, you can join this cool little club that I'm putting together. And over time, he gets a lot of smart people in his club, and weird things on how he runs it. And I guess people were just bored back then. But to join the club, to join the original Bavarian Illuminati, you had to start keeping a diary, and you had to write down everything that you did all day, every day, like every 15 minutes. Like, I went here, I talked to this person, here's what we talked about. You would just make a full index of everything you were doing. And then once you graduated, you would start taking notes on what your friends were doing and what your teachers were doing. And at a certain point, you were just like a spy writing down everything that was happening, and you would deliver that directly to Adam Weishaupt himself. So this guy becomes this all-seeing eye, literally, like at the top of this pyramid, and all these people that he's talking to are just giving him all their information. And there was this other dynamic that since he's in the university system and he knows all the other teachers, that if anyone ever asked Adam, like, hey, how do you create this chemical? Hey, when was this particular thing found? Hey, where does this book, where can I get this book from? And it would just seem like the dude always had the answer to freaking everything. And it wasn't because he was smart. It was because this was before you could just text him and expect an answer in 5 seconds. You would send him a letter, and it would take a couple weeks to hear back. So now he gets a letter, and it's like, oh, I don't know, but I know the guy that knows. So he would go and ask the professor, hey, how do you make this chemical? Okay, cool. And then he would send that back. But when he sends it back, it makes it sound like he's the one that has all this information. Right. So slowly people start building up this vision of like, damn, dude, this Illuminati dude, he knows everything. Like, this guy is so well connected, because he was connected, but he made it seem that he was the source of all of it. And on top of that, because he's getting notes on where everyone's going and their goings on, he could be like, hey, I know you're cheating on your wife too. Or I know, like, he would know things about people that would be like, how the hell does he know? He was kind of like an OG Epstein in a way, where he's just got
Right.
this blackmail. Well, those two dynamics, making friends with a bunch of really smart people and making it so that your connections are very like secretive or like exclusive, and then also having dirt on all of these people, again, like, that is Jeffrey Epstein model. That
Right.
is the fill in the blank. That's the hip hop Illuminati. That's all of these different models where you get some sort of monopoly over next level intelligence, like the most bleeding edge intelligence, and the dirt on the people that have that intelligence, so that you can keep it all to you. That's the thing about the Illuminati that gets repeated and repeated over time. So even though the Illuminati fell again in like the late 1700s, the template, the people that were in it, they weren't idiots either. They knew how it was operating and how it was going on. So when it disbanded, they were like, well, I'm just going to use that for my little thing. And now that's kind of how everything sort of works, right? But that,
Yeah.
I mean, that's my undying fascination with the Bavarian Illuminati, is how they invented that template and that we still use it today and refer to it.
That's awesome. That's crazy.
Wow.
So you don't think there's anything like that that's connected to the past today? Nothing current.
Oh, I do. So
Oh.
when the Bavarian Illuminati fell, late 1700s, they had gotten a lot of their high-ranking members from Freemasonry, specifically, without getting to like the nitty-gritty details, but the Lodge of Strict Observance was this huge Freemasonic body inside Germany at the time, Bavaria, and they were siphoning. They would have Illuminati members join the Freemasonic lodges and then make nice with the worshipful masters or the deacons or like the high-ranking members. And once you got them, and now they were in the Illuminati, you basically got their entire lodge with it. So they spent a lot of time almost poaching Freemasons. Like, the Freemasons would be in both, but since the Illuminati was more secret than the Freemasons were, you could outwardly be a Freemason, but you wouldn't tell anyone that you were an Illuminati. So therefore, it almost has a hierarchy. Like, that one is almost like, higher up than the Freemason because it's more secret. So after Illuminati kind of falls because they got exposed, all of those Freemasons just went back into their Freemasonic lodges, but now they had all this information that they got from the Bavarian Illuminati. So it kind of goes Bavarian Illuminati, they fall, all that gets reabsorbed back into Masonry, and in particular, it seems that French Freemasonry, when they're all very different, but French Freemasonry in particular absorbs a lot of that Bavarian Illuminati DNA. And then through there, French Freemasonry, there's also something called the Rites of Memphis and Mizraim, which are the degrees that go up to like 99 and plus. And someone's like, oh, the high, 99 degree Mason, that's a real version of Masonry. It's not considered regular in the States, but that Memphis Mizraim, it does seem that there's a direct lineage: Bavarian Illuminati, French Freemasonry, Rites of Memphis, and Mizraim. And then from there, it's kind of harder to track because people now kind of like pick and choose. It's almost like a all-you-can-eat buffet of occultism. So people take a little bit of Aleister Crowley, a little bit of Freemasonry here and there. But there's absolutely a direct lineage from Bavarian Illuminati to today through Rites of Memphis Mizraim.
That's another thing I was asking you about, because I saw that you had a book about Aleister Crowley. What was your fascination with him?
Just the great, like, people are almost think that if you pick up and start reading a book from Aleister Crowley, like, you just go right to hell, or like a demon gets summoned right behind you, and I always thought that was such an interesting concept. And it's when I do interviews with other people, it's one of the questions that I'll start to get into is like, do you think that if I ordered a book off Amazon right now that no one's ever read, it doesn't like, no one etched it in blood or anything, like, it just comes right off of a printer, off of a digital machine, and it gets sent to my front door, but it has words, and if I read those words in the right order, does a demon just pop up in front of me? And if not, like, what is? And I think that Crowley and Eliphas Levi and a few other like really deep occultists, people almost feel that if they just acknowledge Anton LaVey's Satanic Bible, they're just like, man, if you even own that book or open it or read it, there's something that you're going to have to go to church, or you're going to have to, confess or something to get that sin off of you. So I always thought that was fascinating concept. And then I heard at one point someone referred to Aleister Crowley as just kind of like an edgelord. He was just like a 13-year-old Reddit poster going ham on 4chan. And part
Yeah.
of it was like, hey, if you can't handle this edgy stuff that I'm writing here, then don't pay any of my other stuff mind, because he actually does go into some really deep philosophical concepts that wouldn't be available for normies that got turned away from reading him about him doing like coke or the Book of Law or something, or Book of Lies. So I think that that's one aspect of it too. But then you've also got the other extreme of people who are like, he was a god on earth, he did summon demons and he was magical and I don't think that's true either. He was very clearly a very flawed human being with a huge ego. He would lead people up on these crazy mountain excursions and leave them for dead, literally. Like people would just die because he'd be like, hey, you should climb this mountain with me. And they would get a quarter of the way there and they're like running out of breath because they've never climbed a mountain before. And he would just look down and just be like, sucks to be you, and just keep going at it. So like that happened often enough. This guy, like people would get stuck in the great pyramids and stuff. So he was definitely a dick. The other thing that fascinates me about him is the link to usually goes through like the Beatles album, or there's like the Black Sabbath references where they talk about Crowley in the lyrics. So there's definitely a direct lineage from Crowley into pop culture. And that was always curious too, like why this one guy? And I think that it's that he was the first person in Victorian. Remember, this is like Victorian society that he comes out of. And in Victorian society, it's almost like Japanese culture where it's so rude to draw attention to yourself. It's so improper that you wouldn't want to ostracize yourself by doing anything to make you stand out. And then here comes Crowley, like, look at me, like, you know what I mean? Like I'm doing magic and I'm doing sex magic, and look, I'm naked right now. Look, I'm doing drugs. I'm smoking opium. I'm doing coke. Like he would just do these things and say, me, me, me. Look, here's a bunch of poetry about it. He was very unapologetic about all the norms that he was just breaking left and right. So that makes sense why that becomes sort of this like a new wave, especially in music and rock music and Hollywood. And I think he coined a version of this term that we're all stars, and like men and women are stars. And that's when you get this star culture where now all of a sudden people are like, yeah, why shouldn't I promote myself? Why shouldn't I make everything about me? That is like star culture and star power. So I think that's Aleister Crowley is so ingrained with our current culture that you'd have to just be willfully ignorant to not at least be interested into what he is and where he came from and why people care about him.
Yeah, I think he would definitely have like a TikTok or Instagram if he was alive today.
Oh, he would be the one that's like eating like feces and stuff just to get people, reporting him and stuff. It seems like that would be his thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is that book about that you wrote, that comic book?
Well, I've got a few different ones that reference him. One of the main ones is the Homunculus Owner's Manual that I did with Juan Ayala of the One-on-One podcast. So this one talks about Crowley, but it's mostly in the context of creating a homunculus. And there is a very specific type of homunculus that Aleister Crowley defined in his book Moonchild. So I don't want to make assumptions that everyone knows what a homunculus is. It's essentially the classical concept of it was that inside sperm, our ancients thought that there was just a little fully sized human being. Like there was a full man inside each sperm, and that they kind of just had to put it in a womb of any kind, and that over time it would just grow from a little man into a bigger man. There wasn't really a concept of this, like a fetus forming from like almost like a single cellular organism and then slowly getting defined over time. It was just like, no, you have fingernails and you've got a beard and like you're ripped, you know what I mean? Like you're
Right.
fully formed. You're just a teeny tiny, like muscle wrestling character version of yourself, and then it gets bigger.
Right.
So that was the original premise of a homunculus, and all these alchemists and philosophers had all sorts of theories on how essentially they could grow a little man without the need of a woman. Like they didn't even need a female womb, or at least a human female womb. And that was the original premise of homunculus. The Aleister Crowleyan version is way more spiritual / demonic, where they're not physically thinking that they're going to make a little man out of sperm or anything. The Crowleyan homunculus was that when a woman gets pregnant, in the first, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, I guess the first trimester, that it's essentially an empty shell. It's just like it's a vessel waiting for a soul, and that at some point the soul gets connected to the fetus, and now it's like an actual living thing. But if you could bring this is going to sound weird, but you would bring a pregnant woman out into the middle of a desert, specifically into like a big desert area, because the desert was known that's where demons and ghosts would kind of just be wandering constantly. They had nothing to latch onto, so they're ready to jump into something. And you're basically going out into the desert and you're throwing a PR campaign. You're like, hey, come eat at Joe's. Check this out. We now open for service. We got this baby, and here's the parents. And like, this will be the best body. If you're trying to look to inhabit a body, like, here it is, demons, jump into this one. So that the whole premise of the Moonchild ritual was that you were creating this Crowleyan homunculus, where you're basically converting an empty shell of a fetus, inviting a demon into it, and then that demon would essentially become the Antichrist, that they would usher in this new, magical world. But so that was one of the many different references to Crowley. That's probably the one that gives him the most direct references. And then I've also got a series called Time Samplers. And in Time Samplers, the last issue, in issue 5, they go and they investigate the Titanic and a whole bunch of other stuff. But their arch enemy is essentially trying to create Aleister Crowley through AI. He's trying to like re-amalgamate what Crowley would have been and bring him back into this world and give him like a little robot body, like very transhumanist-esque. So yeah, I guess Crowley makes a few different cameos in numerous books in my lines.
It's awesome. Let's share your campaign,
please.
All right. Do you have a link, or do you want to share that?
Yeah,
or do you want me to...
I've got one at nasacomic.com that'll bring you to the Kickstarter campaign. This is the first one that I started, and then I also have an Indiegogo campaign, and I'll post a link in private chat to that one. But it's at igg.me/@/NASA-comic. But yeah, it's much easier if you just go to the Paranoid America Twitter page, and I've got the links to both of those on there. The reason that there's two is just because Kickstarter has its own built-in audience. Indiegogo has its own built-in audience. There's some people that refuse to use Indiegogo. There's some people that refuse to use Kickstarter. So anyways, I'm just trying to make it as easy as possible to use whoever's crowdfunding platform of choice to help back this comic. So yeah, you're looking at the Indiegogo one. Both of them have already hit over 100% funding. So they're absolutely going to be printed, and they're going to be shipped probably September, at the very latest October, but I'm pretty sure they're all going to be in the mail by September. So yeah, there's 3 different covers. There's the main cover that I was just showing you guys originally. There's also going to be a variant cover. There's also going to be a foil cover. Yeah, and then a whole bunch of other really cool things. I've got like a little custom patch that's based on the Apollo 11 patch that they gave to all the astronauts, the little iron-on. But the version I'm using, it uses the exact same color palette, but instead of this American Eagle from the Apollo 11, it's got Stanley Kubrick with a movie camera. So there's like a lot of cool sort of exclusive stuff like that baked into this campaign, so that basically anyone that gets the printed comic through this particular campaign gets a bunch of cool like exclusive stuff that won't be available outside of it. Yeah, there's like a trading card. There's a little print. That one that you're looking at for 19, that's one of the variant covers that was done by one of the interior artists, John Fortune. And that cover itself, you can see it's basically got a little nod to like every damn Stanley Kubrick movie, but they're all on the moon. It's got the twins from The Shining. It's got Alex DeLarge from Clockwork Orange behind him. Yeah. And if you there's actually a scene in the book, but Stanley Kubrick is basically like designing the astronauts' outfits, and he's just comparing like a traditional astronaut outfit, but then he's also got an astronaut version of the Clockwork Orange getup with like the suspenders and the onesie. So yeah, there's a lot of places where we kind of like force Kubrick lore and moon lore to interact with each other.
Yeah, I like that cover actually. I think that's my favorite cover.
That's one of the coolest things about these campaigns is because when you just release a regular comic, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have one book with multiple different cover variations and stuff. Like the cover variations make the most sense when you're doing these exclusive campaigns so that they're like a special reward for people that were really there at day one and really wanted this thing to be a success. And then maybe conventions. Usually conventions, people expect to see some kind of special cover because they were there in person to get it. So I've been trying my best to sort of fit those expectations. So if anyone ever backs an early campaign about a comic, there's always going to be some like really cool exclusive thing you won't be able to get anywhere else unless you also see me in person at a convention. I think I've only done like 1 or 2 conventions in the last 10 years. So this is kind of the only way to get real cool exclusive stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And you can see the patch right in that one. So that is the package. If anyone's on the fence, the $99, it's called the Cosmic Conspiracy Pack, but it's just got all of the covers. It's got the little embroidered patch. There's a Room 237 keychain. There's a bunch of 4x6 sticker sheets that all have like 10 plus stickers on each one. One of them is a Stanley Kubrick direct your own moon landing sticker pack. I really try to go way above and beyond so that when someone gets one of these packages, it's like opening up a freaking Christmas present or like a birthday present where it keeps coming and coming. Like there's all these different things included. So that's really like, again, if they took Santa Claus away from us, like I'm giving them back in a small way. And if you keep going down, there's also a list of different add-on items. So there's an add-on item, for example, with a little fake moon landing playset. So I've got a whole series of these handmade playsets that I've been working on for the last year. So I've got one for Bigfoot, and I've got a Hillary Clinton lizard one, and one of them is this Stanley Kubrick fake moon landing playset, and it basically has a little Kubrick and a little camera, and there's a moon rock, and there's 2 astronauts. Yeah, it's right there. So these ones are really freaking fun. People seem to really like these ones because they come in a little custom blister pack that's like it's displayable on its own. Like it comes, you can open it up, you can play with them. Some of them even have a little lights that turn on and off. But these Kubrick one doesn't have a light in it because I couldn't fit anything else in here. I tried to fit as much stuff in this little package. But you just as it is, you can just put it on a wall or you can just prop it up somewhere. And it's perfect as is. Like you don't have to take it out or do anything with it. So I've really liked making these things, and they're all limited to 80 or less will ever be made out of any of these.
Nice.
And then there's an opportunity to get into the whole backlog. So I mentioned Time Samplers, and it had the Aleister Crowley, and it has Titanic. It gets in the MK Ultra, Monarch, like every conspiracy theory ever. You can just grab the entire series to plug onto whatever your backing is on the NASA, and there's no extra shipping or anything. So it's probably the cheapest and best way to get the rest of the backlog.
Nice. Yeah, it's a good deal. Trading cards.
Another thing I've been working on for many, many years, and I've finally figured out a way to do it over time. And it's basically every new comic that I print, I'm probably going to release 4 or 5 new trading cards. So everyone will get one for free. But I'm also just constantly adding to a huge set of trading cards. And I've owned the domain conspiracycards.com forever, but I just haven't had the resources or time to make it its own thing. So I'm just slowly building it up. So after the next, 6 or 7 comic releases, there'll probably be a crowdfunding campaign for like a straight official foil packed, like rare hologram inserts, sticker inserts, all that.
That's awesome.
And that's something that's been on my mind since forever. I got a Pog project too. I want to make some Pogs. I gotta do one thing at a time, man. It's not easy doing all this stuff as a one-man army.
Yeah. No, for sure. Awesome. Well, there it is, man. If anybody out there watching this now or on the replay, check out this campaign. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and if you just go to nasacomic.com, even if this is in the future, I'll just make it so it'll redirect to wherever you can currently get the book. So if you're watching this and it's like months later, a year later, and you go to nasacomic.com, it'll probably just bring you right to the Paranoid American website with a little buy button, and the book will just be right there. You probably won't be able to snag one of these awesome covers or the hollow foil cover or the action figure or the patch, because again, all that stuff is pretty exclusive to this campaign, but you'll absolutely be able to get a copy of this book.
Yeah, that's some great artwork.
Yeah.
That page in particular is a really fun little subplot in here that when Stanley Kubrick was directing 2001 Space Odyssey, this is real, that the Beatles approached him and they wanted Stanley Kubrick to direct a musical adaptation of Lord of the Rings starring the Beatles. And he turned it down at the time because he was already like, neck deep inside of the Space Odyssey 2001, wink, wink. But he was already too preoccupied with that he turned it down. You might be able to assume too that he was like, I don't want that on my resume. I don't want the Beatles on my. But this comic, it imagines what if he had said yes. So right here you can see a full blown like a half page splash illustration of the Beatles as Lord of the Rings characters and Stanley Kubrick directing them in the background.
That's awesome. Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun.
The little red image right there alone's got a Lolita reference, Spartacus reference. It's got the little all-seeing eye on his desk to kind of represent that he's under the watch of his overseers. Right. So yeah, every single page in this entire book has got some kind of really deep cut reference. So even if you don't know anything about Kubrick or conspiracy, it's fun in its own right just because it's well written and it's got some great jokes. But if you're so deep into it that you know about the surrealist dinner ball and you know about how the monolith is supposed to represent like a movie screen, and that how this might be a big simulation, like all that is also baked in to where you'll see it and you'll appreciate it. And if you don't notice it, then you can read it again in a year from now. Or like my goal here is almost like a Kubrick movie. Every time you read through this, you'll always find like some new little detail that you're like, oh my God, I didn't notice that. That's so cool. That's my ultimate mission for this.
That's awesome. Yeah, wow. So much stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I put the big baller ones in there because you never know if Mr. Moneybags comes through and they're like, hell yeah. It happens once in a while. There'll just be someone that's like, I'll drop $5,000 on this. Oh yeah. So I want to always have something care to them. I don't know if they like. Usually, no one grabs those tiers, but they need to be there.
Yeah, definitely catch that whale when it comes by.
The cheapest tier is $7. You can get this thing digitally, and that's the whole comic plus another 8 pages that didn't make the print version, and some of them were just because they were a little more adult than I wanted the rest of the book to be in print. I've got some sketches that were kind of the original version of this comic, because originally this was just a 1-page funny thing that I was going to throw into the back of a book. And that 1 page came out so great. I was like, no, this has to be a whole own series now. Like I need a bunch of these.
What's the audio here? The MP3 audio?
So I've got a couple really catchy songs about NASA, and I've got a bunch that I never released. So it'll come with a bunch of unreleased NASA-related songs, some about Stanley Kubrick and stuff, and then it'll just have like a whole digital little bundle. It'll have a bunch of variant covers that also didn't make it to print, a bunch of wallpapers for phone and background and social media and stuff.
For $7. Can't beat that.
Yeah, and once it's digital on the website, it won't come with all those extras. So again, like almost everything on these campaigns is really made to incentivize things that you won't get outside the campaign for any reason.
Right. Very exclusive. Very nice.
Yeah, I hope you like it. I hope everyone likes it as much as, again, this has been over 5 years in development. So this has been on my table for, over longer than people have gone through high school, right? Like this is longer than my high school career has been working on this book. So it's been a long time coming, and I fully intend to be promoting this thing for the next 10, 20 years, or basically until I'm dead. As long as Stanley Kubrick and moon landing theories are in vogue, like I'm gonna be pumping this thing.
So how many books have you put out by now? Like,
My list is about 60 unique books, maybe
wow.
like
Whoa.
30 or 40 different titles on those books. But they're
Yeah.
all out in very different forms. Like for example, I've got 6 or 7 pamphlets that are ready to go, but they're going to also require campaigns just like this. So it's rough, but it's like I could drop everything all at once on the website, but you really do need a really good marketing campaign for each individual book to get people excited about it. Because if I were to just release the book, I wouldn't be able to have the cool little variant covers and the patches and all the little exclusive stuff. But also, it's way different when it's just like, okay, go to the website, there's stuff for sale now, versus hyping people up for a month or two and then releasing it and having all this fanfare around it. So it almost is mandatory to have one of these big crowdfunding campaigns for every book. So I've got, I think, 12 or 13 different projects that are ready to go with campaigns. And each of these campaigns takes about a month and a half. So for the next year and a half, 2 years straight, I'll always have something new coming out that I'm raising and I'm pushing. So yeah, there's going to be so much more just like this.
Awesome. Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. Let's go out there and back it, everybody. So before I let you go, one more question. Deep underground military bases. What's your
definitely.
What's your thoughts on those? Because you having been in the military.
Yeah, I didn't get invited to any of them, but I do 100%. I mean, they objectively exist. They're not real. This is not a theory. They really do exist. The only real theory is that what are they used for? How many of them are still actively being used? Because they were built all over the place in the mid-century, a little bit afterwards. But a lot of the claims are they've been abandoned ever since then. Yeah, I don't believe any of that. I don't know how much of like the Phil Schneider talks I'm all in on. Like he was the one that was talking about shape-shifting aliens and interdimensional galactic portals and like these underground
battles
ways. And yeah, so I don't know if I'm fully into everything Phil Schneider's ever claimed about the Dumbs, but the Dumbs definitely exist. I mean, and if you think there's going to have to be a place for people to retreat when anything pops off, anything big, you know, let's just say it's like a war that starts popping off. You're not really safe in the skies. You're not really safe in a big compound that's visible from, you know, satellites or anything. You probably be a lot safer if you can go into one of these deep underground military bases. The other thing too is that they hollow out mountains and they use it for toxic waste disposal, data storage, all sorts of different things. So yeah, it's almost silly for anyone to dismiss that deep underground military bases exist at all. It's really to what scale, how recent. Like I guess the most grandiose version of this is that there are entire cities with skyscrapers and working electricity, just like a straight up, you know, take a slice out of New York City, just underground. I don't know how close that is to the accurate version of it, but if you consider a deep underground military base just a huge hole that the military built just for funsies, of course that exists. They do so many weird, crazy things with our tax money. Why wouldn't they have a bunch of holes built?
Right. Yeah, and I've heard the theory like the Denver airport like goes underground and is connected to some of these military bases.
That one has a little bit of lore back to it, because if you look at the original construction of the Denver airport, it was almost like they built an entire city / airport and then scrapped it and then built another one on top of it. So yeah, there's definitely already some sort of evidence that either they just wasted a bunch of money and it was just a sunken cost and they built on top of it, or there's like a backup city, like a backup airport under the airport. Right. So I could see both of those being true. I could see them building like an underground city, but then also neglecting it and letting it go to crap, just like the government does with above ground buildings and cities. You know what I mean? So I can see someone having the plan and then just not acting on it or not needing it for decades and letting it go into complete disrepair. But I absolutely feel that they exist.
But for what reason? That's the question.
I mean, what reason do they have to do almost anything? What's the reason for MK Ultra? What was the reason for, put inducing
Because they
comas
can.
into people? Yeah, because they can. Why does a dog clean itself, right?
Right. Awesome. Well, hey Thomas, it's been great talking to you. It's been a great conversation. I love this stuff. Not too many people we can talk to about this crazy stuff.
It's me, man. Yeah, if you ever got crazy stories you need to unload, I guess I'm now the person. I'm like a conspiracy therapist.
Awesome.
That's a good name too, conspiracy therapist.
I like that
Conspiracy
name.
therapist.
Yeah. It's a great title for a comic book. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, y'all.